Hello everybody and welcome back to Business Blaze. I am your boy with the blaze, Simon. I really am a man with the blaze because I don't know at what age you become middle-aged, but I must be getting there, right? Like, I have a wife and a kid and I definitely look middle-aged because when people find out that I'm recently 33, just turned 33, they're like, dude, you look like 50, and I'm like, thanks.
You're getting too old for this shit. Yeah.
Oh god, this one. Oh god. I don't even want to do this video. I don't know why I'm here. Sometimes I have to make videos because it's like every video. Hey Simon, hey Simon, hey Simon. Did you hear about Pepsi giving away a Harrier jump jet? Simon, did you hear? Pepsi, they had this competition where they gave away a Harrier jump jet. I was like, no. I made a video about it on my Today I Found Out channel, but sometimes you guys won't leave me the alone until I make a video. Leave
Billy alone! Please!
And so here I am, making the guy who tried to claim a Harrier jump jet from Pepsi. It didn't go well. I'll try to pretend that I'm entertained throughout this whole video. You ready? But when I was a kid, back when I was a kid. Oh, this is not me. If you're new here, you're probably wondering what the f is going on. In fact, you've probably already clicked off because you're like this. I don't need to watch some guy who smoked crack make a video on YouTube. I haven't smoked crack. Smash that dislike button. Danny writes us a script. I read it. Sam, the memologist, adds some memes. Brian, the meme accountant, who is not an employee of Business Blaze, he just goes in the comments and, oh, I'm tripping over my cables here. He counts up all the memes like an absolute legend. But Brian, I'll send you some free merch. Brian, send me an email if you want some free merch. I don't know how I'll arrange that, but I can. If anyone else would like merch, just go to Perch the Merch, P-U-R-C-H, themerch.co, not P-E-R-C-H, as in like a bird would perch on something because that will take you to a Rickroll. Oh my God, we should get on with the video. You can see that I'm procrastinating because, well, I don't want to do this. Back when I was a kid, choosing a breakfast cereal in the supermarket aisle usually involved a lot of intense consideration. The decision rarely had anything to do with the quality or taste of the cereal itself. It was more to do with the fabulous free gifts that you were promised if you saved up enough tokens from the back of the packet. Sometimes the free gift even came in with the cereal, which was cool. Some of the packets actually had free plastic toys buried somewhere deep within the cereal itself. Of course they did. I just repeat everything Danny says, or more, Danny repeats everything I say, but God, we're on the same page. But you don't see so much of that kind of thing these days. I imagine the manufacturers moved away from the concept when they realized that their target audience were choking to death on the crap He-Man figures at the breakfast table. No one ever choked on this shit. Let's stop worrying about all of this and put the toys back in the cereal because it was fun. Why do we have to suck the fun out of everything? But I was always more interested in the higher value gifts, which you usually had to cut out and save the tokens printed on each packet until you had collected enough to send off and claim the prize. I remember this as well, and the bigger the box of cereal, the more tokens you get on the back. I was one of 4 siblings, so my parents would always buy the biggest box of cereal, like, 3 kilograms of Honey Nut Cheerios or whatever, a big motherfucker box. And there would be like 8 tokens on the side. You'd be like, sweet. God, I could go for a bowl of cereal right now. And I would happily spend weeks munching my way through even the most foul of breakfast cereals if it meant that I could get my hands on a book, a record, or 2 sets of bike reflectors, a pair of MIDI binoculars, or the Pink Panther 5-in-1 spy kit, which sounded amazing, but the reality was a crushing disappointment, which wasn't fit to be shoved inside a recycled Christmas cracker for orphan children. Jesus Christ. We could just say it was bad, Danny, couldn't we? But that's why Danny is a writer and I am a reader. What's up with those, in the back of comic books or whatever? I don't think I ever saw this, but it was always like, and you'd see it in movies or whatever, it'd be like X-ray specs. And it'd be like, you could send off your, $2 or whatever. Tell me, Americans, if this is actually a thing, because I've just seen it in films. At the back of the comic book, there'd be this thing, and it'd be like, send off the $2 and you get your free X-ray glasses. And obviously they don't work, because if you were getting X-ray glasses, all your friends would get cancer, which, is not brilliant. There'd be lawsuits. So, they don't work. So what do you just get? You get like a pair of regular glasses that don't work? How is that legal? I initially thought that John Leonard sounded like my kind of guy. Who's John Leonard? He was a 21-year-old business student from New York who, very much like myself, had his eye on the bigger prize. John wasn't interested in the pencil toppers, the glow-in-the-dark stickers, or the novelty spoons. He dared to dream even bigger than the Pink Panther 5-in-1 spy kit. How dare anyone dream bigger than that? How dare you! John Leonard was chasing the Harrier jump jet. For the full story, We have to go back to 1996 when PepsiCo launched their Pepsi Stuff campaign. The idea was that you collected Pepsi points with every can or bottle of Pepsi that you bought. If you really drank yourself silly with the fizzy stuff, you'd quickly get fat and all your teeth would start to fall out. But on the plus side, there's a plus side, free dental care. That was one of the prizes. It wasn't really, allegedly. You'd also get to redeem your points for a choice of spectacular products from the hallowed pages of the catalogue. You'd have to drink a lot of Pepsi to be able to claim anything half decent, though. If you fancied a t-shirt, you'd have to down 75 cans of Pepsi. Fucking hell. Before you could accrue enough points to get your hands on it. That's a lot of Pepsi. If you were more interested in the cool leather jacket, that would involve drinking a quite staggering 1,450 cans first and consuming 69,600 grams of sugar in the process. Better go for extra large just to be on the safe side. Surely no one drank that much. You'd be like, yeah, I got a leather jacket. But I mean, how much is a can of Pepsi? Like, pound? £2? £2? So you're spending somewhere between £1,500 and £3,000 on a leather jacket, which is probably, allegedly, a bit shit, and probably has a Pepsi logo on it. Naturally, Pepsi launched a big expensive TV commercial to help promote the new campaign, and it was this fun 30-second ad that caught the attention of John Leonard. I'm definitely going to call him John Lennon at some point throughout this video, I'm just warning you ahead of time. That's just reminded me of Yoko Ono, and now I feel sad, because I thought of Yoko Ono. And now you're thinking of Yoko Ono. I'm sorry. The commercial was surprisingly funny for Pepsi, who at this point usually just threw millions of dollars at Michael Jackson to appear in their commercials and then set fire to his hair. Really? But they appeared to have their mighty corporate tongue in their mighty corporate cheek when they were storyboarding this particular commercial, which depicts a cool kid waking up the morning, getting ready for school. As we see each item of the kid's clothing, a coupon pops up on the screen detailing how many Pepsi points it cost him. So he puts on his sunglasses, the message on the screen reads, "Shades, 175 Pepsi points," and similar captions pop up when we see his t-shirt and his leather jacket. I assume this kid was massively obese, and also rich because his parents must have bought him a lot of Pepsi. For the climax of the commercial, we cut to a scene of a school campus where we see the same teen capturing the attention of his teenagers and fellow students by landing a giant fuck-off Harrier jump jet on the school tarmac just next to the bike racks. Sure beats the bus!
Now, the more Pepsi you drink, the more great stuff you're going to get.
Sure beats the bus.
Laughs the slightly annoying kid as he disembarks from the craft, and a caption flashes up on the screen which reads, "Harrier fighter, 7 million Pepsi points." Okay, I know this story so thoroughly, nothing surprises me anymore, but you can guess where this is going with old Johnny Leonard. At this point, I would imagine that over 99.9% of the viewing audience would have realized that this was Pepsi just being playful. I would say it's definitely more than 99.9%, because that would be 1 in 1,000 people thinking that you can actually get a Pepsi jump jet, and 1 in 1,000 people are not that dumb. I'm taking off my shoes, because I don't have to wear shoes at work if I don't want to. I can do what I want. Some people might have found it a little bit far-fetched and questioned whether the school's safety regulations would have really permitted the landing of a jet-powered aircraft on the ground. Spoiler alert, no. Just no. I actually made a video a while back about whether you can land a helicopter wherever you want, and the answer is yes if it's an emergency, otherwise no. You can't just land your helicopter wherever you want. You can't just fly to McDonald's and be like and landing it, although they did in that movie Richie Rich, but he probably got some FAA violation or whatever.
Get to the chopper!
But on the whole, most of the viewing audience would have got the joke and realized that a fizzy drinks company wouldn't really be offering a Harrier jump jet in their catalogue of goodies. That clearly wasn't Pepsi's scene anyway. Everyone knows that Pepsi is far more interested in fleets of warships. I figure if I'd never made that Pepsi Navy video, which also turns out they didn't have a Navy. It was basically just the press getting it wrong, which, as I always say on this, is really surprising because the press always gets things completely right, never exaggerates, and never blows things out of proportions because why would they? What possible reason could they have for that other than money? However, John Leonard's response to the commercial was a little different to most. Instead of laughing along with Pepsi, he thoughtfully stroked his chin, something like this, and reflected on how 7 million Pepsi points for a Harrier jet is not actually that bad of a deal. And it didn't even necessarily involve drinking that much Pepsi. You see, clever old John had taken time to check out the small print. Customers only ever really needed to get their hands on a minimum of 15 Pepsi point labels from cans or bottles. After this, you can purchase additional Pepsi points for just 10 cents each. So unless you really like the taste of Pepsi, you were never expected to buy over 1,000 cans to get that nice leather jacket. You would just send off however many Pepsi points you managed to collect, along with a check to cover all of the extra Pepsi points you needed to claim your reward. At this point, you realized that the marketing team had made a bit of a blunder with the spoof pricing of the Harrier jet. 7 million Pepsi points may sound like a ridiculously high number, but John quickly realized, after he'd drunk 15 cans of Pepsi, that he only needed just under $700,000 worth of Pepsi points for just 10 cents each to claim the jet, which is not bad considering that your average Harrier jump jet at the time was fetching somewhere in the region of $20 million. Okay, I remember this. As I said, I've done this before, but that is pretty f***ing epic. I'm sorry I keep touching my nose. I might have allergies or something. My nose is really itchy today. If Pepsi had paid attention during maths class, they would have realized that 200 million Pepsi points would have been a far more sensible figure for the aircraft, and it could have saved them a lot of legal wrangling down the line. After collecting 15 Pepsi point labels, John Leonard had to figure out how he was going to pay for the other 6,999,985 points that he required to claim the jet. Quite remarkably, he managed to raise 700 grand very quickly by asking friends and acquaintances to invest in his cunning plan. It's also like, you're gonna become an arms dealer. I feel like this is like that War Dogs movie, where those two guys are like, let's become arms dealers. It's like funny Lord of War. I don't know what it is about arms dealers movies, but I love them. I'm like, yes. Even though they're always like a bit morally bankrupt, often end up in jail or in a lot of trouble, but it's pretty fun. There's a parallel universe out there where I'm an arms dealer, weighing up Kalashnikovs by the pound. On March 28, 1996, he stuffed his order form for a Harrier jump jet into an envelope along with a check for $700,008.50. The extra $10 was very important, as this was the price listed for the Pepsi Stuff catalog for postage and packing on all the products. John may have felt a bit silly if he'd forgotten that part. He perhaps should have been slightly concerned that the catalog itself made no mention of the Harrier jet. It was all t-shirts and baseball caps and shit. But he still went ahead and posted his order anyway. Then he went back home and waited patiently for his new Harrier jump jet to arrive. I can't imagine he actually expected that to happen. This is all just a game. I know the ending, but let's pretend that I don't know the ending. This is all just him speculating that, Pepsi's not going to acquire a Harrier jet and send it to him. That it's going to end up in some sort of settlement where he's not going to get 20 million, but he will get some amount that is higher than the 700,000 he put in. Anyway, it would have been fascinating to witness the reaction of the poor soul at Pepsi who opened the envelope at the other end. In all likelihood, they probably thought that John Leonard was either just a jolly prankster who was taking the piss, or a complete blithering idiot in need of medical attention. Either way, they composed a quite polite and kind-hearted response when they returned the check and the Pepsi points label. Perhaps sensing that John might be a bit simple, they wrote him a letter which explained that the Harrier jump jet had only been included in the TV commercials as a joke. The ad was just meant to be a slice of humorous and entertaining marketing for the Pepsi generation. They also thoughtfully included a few free Pepsi coupons in the package as a goodwill gesture. Although it's a bit unlikely that the man who managed to drum up 700 grand of investment in no time would get overly excited about a few crappy Pepsi coupons. In fact, John Leonard wasn't very impressed with the response at all. He was so miffed that he got his team of clearly underworked lawyers to prepare the next communication with Pepsi. They wrote, we got a quote. Your letter of May the 7th, 1996 is totally unacceptable. We have reviewed the videotape of the Pepsi Stuff commercial, and it clearly offers the new Harrier jet for 7 million Pepsi points. Our client followed your rules explicitly. This is a formal demand that you honor your commitment and make immediate arrangements to transfer the new Harrier jet to our client. If we do not receive transfer instructions within 10 business days of the date of this letter, you will leave us no choice but to file an appropriate action against Pepsi. It could be argued that this was a slightly ungrateful response to a corporation company giving you some free coupons for nothing. It's not clear if Pepsi ever got them back. But the letter had clearly got them a bit riled. It must have been quite tempting for them to tell the lawyers that their clients can shove his check and 700 grand up his arse and maybe send them a few free Pepsi t-shirts to help soften the blow a little bit.
Sure beats the boss.
But instead, they politely pointed out that they found it difficult to believe how anyone could take the commercial seriously, and concluded that no reasonable person could possibly argue with John Leonard's analysis of the advert. Look, I know how this ends. I keep saying this, but how do you really think this is gonna go? It's Pepsi, they got a giant team of lawyers. More interestingly, Pepsi made a very significant change to the TV commercial itself. They didn't cut out the Harrier jet joke. All that CGI wizardry had cost them a small fortune to produce. Instead, they simply changed the caption at the end from 7 million Pepsi points to 700 million Pepsi points. It seems that PepsiCo's maths was still a little bit off, but at least this was a step in the right direction. Just to be sure, they also flashed up a "just kidding" disclaimer at in the closing seconds of the ad. So now, John Lennon had to consider his next move. It probably crossed his mind to go back to his circle of investors and ask them to come up with another $70 million so that he could have another go at claiming the jet. Well, also raising $70 million is a lot harder, and then he's going to be paying massively over the odds of the jet, so Pepsi would probably be like, yeah, sure, we'll arrange that and take the extra 50 mil, thanks. But eventually he decided to get his lawyers to file a suit against Pepsi for a breach of contract, misleading advertising, fraud. And deceptive is like, no. Breach of contract, no. Misleading advertising, maybe. Fraud, no. Deceptive and unfair trade practices, maybe. For reasons that I can't quite fathom, the court proceedings were launched in Miami, despite the fact that John Leonard, I told you I'd do it! Leonard was living in Washington and PepsiCo was based in New York. Well, yeah, because you can choose where you pursue a lawsuit, where there's going to be, he probably chose Miami because, for whatever reason, the laws in Florida are going to be more conductive to the case that he wants to pursue, like it's often done. It seems that the court in Miami couldn't quite understand either. They declared that the case had all to do with them and directed it to be sent to New York, and of course they can do that. But the sojourn in Miami came at a cost to John Lennon, who ended up having to pay $88,000 to cover Pepsi's wasted legal fees. Oh shit, that's a lot of money. When the case rolled into New York and started to attract headlines, the public mood seemed to favor John Leonard. Of course it did, because he's a legend, but also he's not correct. Advertising executive David Verklin claimed that a consumer like Leonard should be celebrated, not sued. He's not being sued, he's suing Pepsi. You have a guy here who's done something pretty clever. I'd give him a tour across the country in a Harrier jet, I'd turn it into a TV commercial. Yeah, it's pretty legit. The BBC correspondent John Blackstone canvassed opinions on the streets of New York and found that most people were in agreement. I think you should get the jet, said Victor Flutkonvitkaf, Jesus Christ. Well, if he drank that much Pepsi, then he probably should, said Harry Bonsthamissy. Dude, Danny, do you always choose the people with the most hard to pronounce? It's America! There's gotta be like a Joe Bloggs, who obviously didn't quite grasp what had happened, but never mind. Maybe he is goofy, said Walter Ovak Fogmore. Okay, Danny, I know you're doing it on purpose now. But they are making those claims. If they can't back them up, then they shouldn't be putting them on air. I should probably just admit that I made those names up as they weren't revealed on air, but the sentiments were very genuine. Thanks, Danny. Awesome. PepsiCo claims that the case should be thrown out. Sometimes I just have to get the coffee in my sentence and I have to read while I'm doing it. Pepsi says it should be thrown out. Did John Lennon actually have a case? It could be argued that the Harrier jump jet was promoted in exactly the same way as genuine Pepsi products like the t-shirt and leather jacket. And as there was originally no disclaimer shown on screen Also, John Lennon's a bit of a prick, allegedly, because he's the reason that when you listen to a TV commercial or like radio or whatever, or you sign up to like, oh yeah, I'd love to get a delivery, and it's like, you gotta, here's a 16-page terms and conditions. He's the fucking reason that Pepsi has to be like, terms and conditions apply, not a guarantee, blah 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 blah, and it goes on for like blah 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 blah, and then finally it's over, and you're like, yeah, legal disclaimers. Thanks, John Leonard, you absolute hero. As there was originally no disclaimer shown on screen or flashing message screaming, "This is just a joke, you massive bellends," it could be perceived that PepsiCo's offer for the Harrier jet was as serious as there is an old woman outside. Hello, old woman. John Leonard's argument was that the commercial promised a reward for a specific act. In this case, collecting or buying 7 million Pepsi points to redeem a Harrier jet. But the court ruled that the commercial was not specific enough and was more of an invitation to treat. I told you. Viewers had been directed to the Pepsi Stuff catalog for further guidance on how to redeem their Pepsi points for products. And of course, the Harrier jump jet was notable by its absence from the catalog. The court also ruled that no objective person could reasonably have concluded that the commercial actually offered consumers a Harrier jet. The official notes from the judge turned out to be a hugely entertaining read, as he pointed out that he was essentially being asked to explain why the climax of the advert was clearly fantastical and why Pepsi's joke was funny. Trying to explain why a joke is funny is obviously a challenge in itself, but his judicial dissection of the ad probably ended up being more entertaining than the actual ad. And we have a long quota, so I'm just going to read that. The callow youth featured in the commercial is a highly improbable pilot, and one who could barely be trusted with the keys to his parents' car, much less the prize artifact, much less the prize aircraft of the United States Marine Corps. Wouldn't that be like one of those F-16s? Rather than checking the fuel gauges on his aircraft, the teenager spends his precious pre-flight minutes preening. The youth's concern for his coiffure, how do you say that word? Is like the hair one? I don't care. Appears to extend to his flying without a helmet. The teenagers comment that flying a Harrier jet to school sure beats the bus, evinces a improbable oh my god, this judge uses words that I just don't know. Evinces a improbable insouciant attitude toward the relative difficulty and danger of piloting a fighter plane in a residential area as opposed to taking public transportation. The judge concluded that fully loaded, the Harrier can float just like a butterfly and sting like a bee, albeit a roaring 14-ton butterfly and a bee with 9,200 pounds of bombs and missiles. In light of the Harrier jet's well-documented function in attacking and destroying surface and air targets, armed reconnaissance and air interdiction, and offensive and defensive anti-aircraft warfare, depiction of such a jet as a way to get to school in the morning is clearly not serious. Yeah, no shit, judgy.
I never broke the law. I am the law.
But that is an excellent judgment.
Mr. I am the law.
Exactly how much John Leonard lost in legal fees is not clear. Well, it's gonna be over 88 grand, that's for sure. But it was probably a small fortune. But it does beg a question. What exactly was he playing at? Was he really hoping to get... No, he was hoping to get a settlement. Was he really hoping to get his hands on the Harrier jet? Was he really just trying to make a point or get his name in the papers? What would he have done with the jet? If Pepsi had ended up selling it to him, sending it to him through the post for a $10 shipping fee, was he just a raving loony? Maybe we'll never know. But it's interesting to note that the check he posted for just over $700,000 was not drawn from his own account, but from that of his lawyers. So in other words, John Leonard was anticipating a legal battle right from the very beginning. What a surprise. But you can't help feeling that all of this just turned out to be a very expensive mistake for John Leonard and his investors, and I'm sure his investors weren't very happy as they all watched their money get pissed away on legal fees. Maybe he should have aimed his sights a little lower when browsing the Pepsi catalogue and gone for the Sony Mini disc player. I bet he only drinks Coke now. Yeah, this protracted legal battle that cost him probably 6 figures in legal fees is going to leave a pretty sour taste in his mouth. And you're just going to a store and every time you see Pepsi, you're like, oh yeah, around that time I lost 100 grand. Ooh-wee. Still paying that off. Bonus fact. Even if PepsiCo had honoured the offer in the commercial and given John Leonard a Harrier jump jet, he may still have felt slightly disappointed when it arrived on his doorstep. The Pentagon has revealed that Harrier jets are just not for sale to the public in any flyable shape. Before selling such a craft to PepsiCo, the jet would have to be completely demilitarized, stripping it of its guns and missile capabilities, and rendered unable to perform a vertical takeoff. So John Leonard would only have received a pretty useless bit of kit anyway for his 700 grand. Oh, I hate it when this happens. I should check this beforehand. Look at that waste of paper. Although it probably would have still looked quite cool on the driveway next to the speedboat. If you get that joke, thank you for being an OG Business Blaze legend. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button. If you didn't, smash that dislike button. You're welcome to. This is Business Blaze, where we blaze. I've been your boy with the Blaze, Simon, Danny, Sam, Brian the Meme Accountant. Thank you all, and I'll see you next time. Purchthemerch.co.
You betray the law!